Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of Coast to Coast Hockey. My name is Adrian, as some of you may know, and I have my good friend Damen here. Damen, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing good, Adrian. How's your day?
Oh man, busy, and I like it though. Keep yourself busy and feel productive, and it's a good feeling. So, first off, I wanted to go right into the mix here. Um, this morning, I heard about all the whole hockey world, I guess, heard about the passing of Chicago Blackhawks great Bobby Hall. He was 84, and we just want to quickly take the time to wish Bobby and his wish Bobby's family, sorry, very deep condolences, and yeah, on behalf of the channel, we wish him and his family very deep condolences.
Same here. Yeah, it's a tough loss for the hockey world because he's meant so much, and especially a Hall of Famer and everything he's done for the game. He may be gone, but his legacy for sure will always be in our hearts, and we're gonna miss him in the hockey world.
Very well said, Damon. And like my dad used to tell me stories about him, him being I think they call him the Golden Rocket, I think, if I'm correct, back in the day, right? That was his nickname, and he was a very iconic player. So again, wish him his family our deepest condolences and thoughts and prayers for him. Going forward, though, we had some breaking news maybe about an hour ago regarding a trade, big trade, yeah, involving the Vancouver Canucks. We have Bo Horvat going to the New York Islanders for Anthony Beauvillier, Atu Ratti, and a conditional 2023 first round pick. David, what do you think of the trade?
Oh my goodness, this is such a unique trade. I'm in such a unique phase because the way I see this trade right now is this is going to be a hot take, but I see the Canucks management is somewhat taking a bit more of a money ball approach with this trade because Aquilini does not want this team to rebuild, and he wants this team to try to patch it up every year. But what the Canucks did, in my opinion, here is pretty clever. They got some good value for Bo Horvat. They got Anthony Beauvillier, who's been a proven top 6 player at the NHL level, and they got Atu Ratu. Like, I know it says a Y at the end of his name, but in Finnish, from my understanding, from a lot of the play-by-play commentators, the Y translates to you. So,
Okay.
like, you pronounce the name Ratu instead of Rati. So, and he was a really good prospect in his draft year, but in his draft year, he didn't really have the best showing. So what essentially led to Ratu falling down to the second round, and he was actually, as funny as it may sound, he was actually contender to battle Owen Power for the first overall pick a few years before that draft ever happened. So I'm thinking right now, and he's picked up his game again, this could look like a true steal for the Canucks if Ratu develops the way that the Canucks want him to, and the way we all expected him before the poor draft year in 2021. And this conditional 2023 from right now, from what we understand, it's currently a top 10 protected. But man, Barzal, Horvat down the middle in New York, that is going to be nasty top 2, like for center spots.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised where the Islanders have been at this year. They were, didn't really have as much high expectations this coming season, but man, they've got a really stellar depth of down the middle. Sorry, with those two now with Barzal and Horvat. We got obviously a very defensively responsible center in Bo Horvat who's also having a great year on the score sheet, right? So it's a good fit for both teams. I think Vancouver obviously got great value for him. If Ratu, sorry, I mispronounced his name earlier. My apologies. Ratu, if he starts to maybe he starts hitting his potential, and like you're saying, this could be a big steal of a trade. Anthony Beauvillier is a serviceable player, and obviously you can't go wrong with a first round draft pick, right? So it's just I think it just works out great for both teams. So definitely they got what they wanted. I think they got good value and probably what they wanted for Bo Horvat in the end.
I agree. It's like you said, like they got what they wanted, but I was gonna say like that first round pick also it's gonna probably lead to another forward, which I think the Canucks are in desperate need of. As you look at where the Islanders are right now, the Islanders are somewhat in that no man's land, but I say this trade, if it works out in the Islanders' favor as well, it'll move them up from that no man's land up to that potential team that can nip at your heels in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I could see them maybe winning a round if everything works out for them, or a round or two, or if Horvat signs maybe in a few years. You never know, but it's going to be really just interesting to see how it all breaks down, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, overall, I think the Islanders have a half decent team, right? And they're pretty solid all around. Like they have great goaltending, obviously. Their blue line's pretty good. You know, obviously Romanov's been playing decent from what I've heard. I haven't had really a chance to take a look at his numbers, but I've been seeing the hit highlights, right? So I'm glad he's doing well there. And now, obviously, with Barzal's been playing great hockey this year too, but just having another great center down the middle who can center your second line, and you can put him on the power play, you can put him on the penalty kill, right? He'll log up a lot of important minutes. So definitely a plus for both teams at the end of the day.
I agree. And also, another thing you mentioned, like center depth. The more I think about it with the Islanders now, it essentially gives. And you mentioned Barzal playing some good hockey. Now, Barzal isn't necessarily the only centerman who has to worry about playing good hockey. Now you have Barzal, and then for sometimes it would be Pajot in that second center spot. I
Mm-hmm.
know this move somewhat more forces Pajot down to the 3 spot, or can move him to the wing, but I think Pajot plays a good 2-way game, so he's probably going to stick at that center spot. And then you also have Casey Cizikas, and man, that Islanders fourth line still to this day is my favorite fourth line in the entire NHL. Cizikas, Martin, and Clutterbuck.
Oh, that is like the unit line. That's all I'm gonna call that. That's a great fourth line. Casey Cizikas has been like a really serviceable, good fourth line center for like a number of years now with the Islanders, and he keeps getting contract from them, and he just everything he does is just great. He just plays good hockey, and for what his role is, great role player.
I agree. And also, he also, I'm just going to bring up his stats. So I'm going to actually try to share screen right
Sure.
now. Like he's someone who, in my opinion, has always been adapting to the game very well. Like you look at his numbers right here, and now he's not a point getter per se, but he looks, some seasons he's pretty good in the plus minus. He's always in the plus or the low negatives, but in that playoffs, he's always a key factor, and he always grinds out every single shift. So that, like, just him in that fourth line should be really good, especially for the playoffs this year for the Islanders.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Islanders know what they're getting out of him, right? So he just gets it done. So it's definitely, man, that's going to be a very deep team going forward. Um, is I think we talked about this already, but is Bo Horvat a free agent at the end of the season?
He is, yeah.
Okay, so I wonder if I wonder if
Probably
the
have to work a sign
Islanders.
and trade, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if they're gonna sign him long term, or maybe it's just a quick rental. Which, I mean, I don't know if I want to have Bo Horvat as just a rental because he's just a different player, right? So I would try to re up him if I'm Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders there. So
Same here. I think that's one of the things with Bo Horvat. You have to try to maintain his good play and try to keep him in New York if you're Lou Lamoriello right now, because such a good player, and he's not even that old. I think he's like 28 or 29 or something along those lines, and he's still going to be a good player for a really long time.
yeah, for sure, for sure, it's definitely a good trade. And I've always liked Bo Horvat. I remember he kind of really stuck out to me during the bubble playoffs. Is when I kind of was we kind of started seeing a little bit more of the West because there was a lot of games on and stuff like that. But he really stuck out, and he was just a monster. And I was like, wow, this guy's a phenomenal player. I take him on my team any day. So for sure, man, it's good to see though. Good trade for both teams. I wanted to change gears here. There was some news. It broke on Twitter, but I told you before we went on here, Damon. But I heard this like a few months ago, before the new year. But apparently, Carey Price and his wife Angie and the kids are going to be moving back to BC in the off season. So, obviously, I wish them well. Maybe this is a good thing for them. They'll be way closer to family, and maybe this maybe might be the end for Carey. Um, it's looking like, right, of his
Yeah.
hockey career. So that was like when I first saw the news. Like I think it was in like before the new year or sometime in January. I can't exactly remember. I'm sorry, guys, but it yeah, like I was kind of sad to see that, but also I'm not surprised and I'm very understanding of it because he's thinking about his family and putting his family first. So I respect that decision for sure.
Same here. It's like you said, like it's a family decision, and it makes sense as well because I know Carey Price's wife Angela is from the Seattle area, and he's from Anaheim Lake. So I heard rumors about Kelowna or Vancouver or something. So,
Eagle spot.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense because right now, I Carey Price, like the last media availability he had, he did say that he doesn't plan on necessarily retiring from hockey at this moment, but I think from like everything that's came out, I think is he probably has already played his last game in that 10-2 win against the Florida Panthers. And he did say in that media availability as well that he wants to wait and see if his body will get to a state where he will be pain free and he can train at a professional level again. So it leads me to wonder if maybe he's if he's doing this right now just to wait until the pain's gone, and because it's probably going to take a few years. Like pain doesn't go away easily from a lot of these injuries, and then they can live their life out there with their family. And then if he's ever ready again, which I don't know if he will be, it's just us speculating right now. And then he could decide maybe if he's healthy again to come back. But also, I was thinking about this, and I'm going to throw you a bit on the spot here, Adrian. He did
Sure.
say in that media availability as well that he doesn't want to stop his chase for a Stanley Cup, and he wants to be a part of the future here in Montreal. So they seem to be thinking about a front office role for him, and I just want your thoughts. If you were to give him some type of front office role or coaching role, which role do you think Carey Price would be best for?
It's a excuse me. That's a good question. I think I can personally see him somewhere in management or maybe somewhere as a goalie coach or development coach, like in that way, player maybe in their player development system. Obviously, that's a very big thing they have now, right? So a very big resource. So I can see him having something like that. I think he'd do well. Obviously, him being like a great leader, on and off the ice. I think he would thrive in a role like that.
I agree, and I also think that the development coach as well work makes a lot of sense because, of course, because of his family status and also both of them being out west, both sides of the family. And it's just something in the summers he can come down and take part in the development camps that they have with Mary Philippe Poulin and Vincent LeCavalier. They both come up, and it's more of a part-time position for both of them.
Mhm.
So the more I think about it, I think that might be what makes the most sense in him working with the goalies, or I don't know. I don't know if he would do anything with the players in particular, but I see him more as a developmental goalie coach as it stands right now.
Yeah, I think it would be good to see him in a role like that because it looks like the Habs are getting younger with their goaltending going forward, and it'd be good to see him mentor the next generation of Habs goaltenders. So it'd be a pretty cool thing to see.
I agree. I like the goaltending we have is pretty good right now. Like Hayden Primo is plays well in small sample size, and then we have Jacob Dobes as well, right? Who I'm kind of I rate him fairly high because he's a pretty good goalie, and also he's actually one of the Habs few Habs prospects who are currently nominated for the Hobie Baker Award along with Lane Hudson. So
Oh, nice. There you go.
that is some pretty good news to have that we have two prospects currently nominated for the Hobie Baker and have a good chance at winning it, and then sometimes I think about if we will draft another goalie fairly high on in this upcoming draft, which I'm not too sure about because there's no goalies that per se stand out to me immediately, unless there's a way we sign Thomas Milik, which I'm big on him, Adrian.
Yeah, he would be a great choice. He's definitely going to get an NHL contract. I personally think sometime within now and before training camp because of how he played phenomenal for Team Canada in the World Juniors this year. That was one of the best goaltending performances I've ever seen in my life. Like I'm not even exaggerating that one bit. Like it was just something amazing to see. That would be really cool to see him sign in Montreal. And we'll see. Right, there's gonna be probably a couple of teams coming up to him and calling him and asking him for contract. But it'd be very good. For Carey Price, going back to him, it'd be cool to see Carey Price to be in a role like that, and maybe help develop the next generation of goalies for the Habs, and continue his great leadership within the team.
I agree. Well said. And also, I just want to switch gears for a bit, and I
Mhm.
just want to touch on mainly the Lavaliger, Raphael Harvey Pinard in recent games. I
Oh
want to
yeah.
know what are your thoughts because Raphael Harvey Pinard, even in some of the worst games that we've had this week, he's managed to stand out and he's always played like with it. He's had a chip on his shoulder and he's had something to prove every single game in, game out.
Yeah, man. Since he's been called up from the Habs, sorry, for called up to the Habs. Sorry, wrong English there. But ever since the call up, he's just been playing great hockey. He's been just playing again. He's just playing like it looks like Brendan Gallagher out there. Just plays with heart and soul, and just man, no, nothing but good things to say. And I know we talked about this, I think, a few weeks ago, like saying, maybe he'll get like a full time position. Personally, I think he's ready. He's showing a lot of confidence in his game, and he's doing all the little things too. So I would love to see him get a full time roster spot going into next season.
I agree. I think also with the way he's performed, he's forcing Marty's hand as well, and he's also gotten some power play time as well. And if I'm Kent Hughes right now, I'm giving him a roster spot, and it's his to lose going into training camp next season. Just with the way he's played, and I think there needs to be room made for him because the entire fourth line, the way I see it right now, with the Laval fourth line with Pizzetta and Belzile and Harvey Pinard, that line is just always generating something. Is always making a positive impact on the ice, whether it's creating offense, shutting down another team's top line, or just getting under the other team's nose. That line, I kind of want to see it stay together a bit longer. But if players become healthy, get healthy, and come back, I kind of just want to see those three just stick together.
I think you're going to see a lot of those guys going forward, because I think we talked about this too, like on the show prior to our segment here. But there's going to be a lot of contracts coming off the books this year, so you're going to see a lot of these young guys that are starting to show their potential, and they're going to start getting more full time positions, and it's going to be great to see. Like I think next year their roster is going to be great, and again, I know I said this before, but trust the process, and you just got to keep trusting it, and it's just things are gonna go great.
Yeah, you know who would always say trust the process.
Joel Embiid.
Not only him, but do you know who else?
No, actually, who's the other
Oh,
one?
I'll
I
give you
actually
a
don't
hint.
know.
He would hack darts in the locker room.
Oh, Tyrion.
Yep.
Really? He used to
Yeah,
say
Michelle
that?
Tyrion always had trust the process.
Really? Oh my god, I had no idea. I must have missed it on like 24CH or something when they used to have that back then. To see
Yeah,
him just
I miss that show so much.
smoking a cigarette, just trust the process, guys. Trust the process.
Yeah, trust this process and no excuses.
Yeah, I remember they used to have that no excuses sign like right above the locker room there, and I thought that was cool. I think that's a good message to send to your players, though, for sure.
I agree. It's always so important, like to have that. And I was actually watching Patrick and the Knuckles podcast, and you're saying that he always loved Tyrion as a coach because Tyrion was always hard on him, but he motivated him to do better every single night in, night out.
You know, like a lot of those old school coaches, like like Terrian and Tortorella, guys like that, like they they are a lot of players. You'd be surprised. Like a lot of players love having guys like that, because those old school guys love getting in your cage, and just getting you going, right? Because they want to try to get the best out of you, and that's just their tactic. And a lot of guys just like, again, a lot of players just get fired up when coaches are like saying like the things that Terry would say to players, and go in the meetings or whatever, right? Like whatever would be going on, or you know yeah, I don't know, we want to say gaslighting them or whatever term you want to use, but it's definitely something that it's worked. I mean, I think the new generation of coaches, I think, is better for the game, but some of those old school tactics at times have been proven to work sometimes, and some of the players still have like that kind of old school mentality with getting fired up like that from those kind of tactics.
I agree. And also, you remember Herb Brooks, the coach of the US 1980s team who led the US to gold medal?
Hmm.
He was very old school. Some of his tactics, he would make he had a lot of tactics where he threatened his players and made and kept playing mind games on them all the time. Like he brought players into the camp midway through the camp. Then during the Olympics, he made one of his players play through a bruised leg, and
Oh
the
my gosh.
doctor's like, you shouldn't be letting him play through this. Like he can't hurt it anymore, but he's going to be in a lot of pain, and it could get worse if he falls wrong. I was like, I don't care, be a hockey player. And that
Wow,
was
that's crazy. That was a good movie though. The Miracle on Ice movie. That was pretty solid.
Kurt Russell's
Yeah.
performance in that movie just hits another level.
Oh yeah. No,
I
that's a
don't think he
solid
won an
film.
Oscar for it, but that was such a good performance.
I got to rewatch that soon. That's a solid film for
Yeah,
sure.
it's on Disney Plus, so it's
Oh,
it's a
there you go.
pretty available.
There you go. Beautiful. So yeah, kind of going back into the Habs performance this week. I believe they went 0-2-1. They lost against Boston in regulation. It was a tough game there. They played pretty well against them at times. They kind of managed them decently. Obviously, there was Detroit. I think they lost on Thursday night, continuing the reverse retro curse. And then Saturday's game was obviously a very forgettable one. That was the one game I had time to really sit down and watch and analyze, and wasn't really the best performance, but you just got to chalk it up as another game and just keep going.
I agree with that Ottawa game. Like we may say it's pretty forgettable, but like that game, though, I'm gonna admit this. I know that was Owen Beck's first NHL game, and I did like his performance from what he was given in the situations he was put in because like we know he's a Scholastic Player of the Year in the OHL, and his hockey sense, in my opinion, was really good. In particular, like he always knew where to be on the ice. But that game, just in particular, like Hoffman had like 2 or 3 posts. Same with Dadonov. Kirby Doc like just mishandled the puck and missed an open net. No, that game, just if the puck, like we had that puck luck, but I just think like our defense was not the best that game. Like that was such a polarizing game for so many reasons. Now, like I was so happy with Owen Beck's performance, but I was really annoyed with the Tank Commanders missing open nets. Not Kirby Doc though. Take Kirby Doc's out of Tank Commander. He's been playing well at center. You guys know who I'm referring to.
Yeah, it's just one of those games like you're not gonna get like you said, Damon. It's just the puck luck. They weren't getting it on Saturday. It was just one of those games like nothing really went their way. Um, Couple of I think DeBrincat scored on a 2-on-1 and just again a little bit sloppy in their own ends. But you know what? It is what it is. The guys are gonna move on and try to be stronger the next game.
Yeah, I just think hopefully this motivates him to play some better hockey. Or hopefully, maybe even a win against Ottawa on Tuesday, which is tomorrow. So
Yeah,
should be in
tomorrow
for a
night.
nice game. It's a bit of a home and home over the span of a few days, so it's going to be interesting. Whenever we play Ottawa, it's always interesting. And I remember those preseason matches against the Sens. I remember DJ Smith's like, "We'll be ready for them in the regular season because of all the fights."
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, they came ready Saturday night, right? So, I mean, I don't know. I personally, yeah, I'm not really a big fan of the Senators. I will say though that they have a good young team. Excuse me, in the process, they have a good young team that's being built pretty well. But man, yeah, they're starting to be a pain in the side again, like they used to be for years.
I agree, but like the thing is, now that we mentioned the Sens, if one thing I do want to mention is I think the Sens have the pieces to go become a playoff team and go deep, but I just don't think DJ Smith is that coach that will take them to the next level. Like I think he did a good job with developing the guys, but I think the Sens, while Bruce Boudreau's available, I think they should try to look to make him their head coach.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I mean, this year, a lot of people were saying, the Sens were going to be battling for a wild card spot. Like even I thought, like, wow, with that top six, right? Like, you bring in Claude Giroux, and then one more, that core that they have is just 1 year older, right? And they're getting closer, right? And I personally thought they would have been, kind of where the Islanders are now, where they're pushing for a spot, right? And honestly, it hasn't been right. Kind of, I guess you can say they're underachieving. I mean, by on paper, I don't know what what the standard was for them, or what not maybe not the standard, but like what the expectations were for them this year. But it seems like they're really underachieving because of the top six that they have. So again, maybe yeah, I think Bruce Boudreau, they did him dirty in Vancouver there, and I really hope he gets another coaching position somewhere. Maybe it's Ottawa, maybe it's another team, but we'll see.
Yeah, a lot of Sens fans that I do know do want the Sens to go after Bruce Boudreau. And this is an interesting comment that Montreal MUFC brings up. One thing I do not understand is this: why Marty is just never mad at anything nor anyone. We may nor dislike Michel Therrien, but his rant as Pittsburgh's, I'm assuming PIT TT means Pittsburgh because I know he did coach in Pittsburgh. Head coach is just legendary. I think this is an interesting point because I find Marty is just one of those coaches who lets players make mistakes and wants them to learn from it. Like, at least from my perspective. What are your thoughts, Adrian?
Yeah, I agree. I think again, it's kind of going back to like what we said earlier about the whole old school and kind of modern hockey coach, right? Um, Marty doesn't go to the media and start criticizing the whole team, and like you said, I think he lets players make mistakes because he knows they're in a process right now, and they're kind of, I guess, more or less in a rebuild, right? Um, and obviously it's just I don't think it's in his blood to be like that. I think Marty seems like he's a good communicator. Um, Again, all due respect to Terry, and again, wasn't really a fan of him in Montreal, but I don't think he was really the best communicator to young players at times. So that's like comparing apples and oranges, right? So it's
Yeah,
definitely a completely polar opposite of a coach. So I mean, I back then, in the mid late 2000s, Terrian style hockey worked. The Penguins made the finals with him, but then they fired him a year later and won the cup, right? So it's like, right, but like I
yeah,
think that's when that style of hockey worked. But I think a guy like Marty is perfect for a young team right now. You can tell the players respect him, and um, and I think the players do respect him too because he's not one of those coaches that like will go rant to the media after a loss and start blaming X, Y, and Z for losing the game for them or whatever, right? So I think there's better ways to handle things like that.
yeah. And now that you mentioned that, like about Marty and X, Y, and Z, like and blaming people, which I think is all very legitimate, like it brings me back to something Michel Therrien would do. I remember whenever Subban made a mistake in Montreal, like on the ice, because he was very offensive minded, and he would
Yeah.
sometimes leave his defensive post, and then that would give the other team room to get a scoring chance or score a game winning goal.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Michel Therrien would often criticize PK Subban. Sometimes I wonder how Subban would have been under Marty and what like he could have learned in a sense from his style of coaching because I just don't think like the Subban and Martin and Michel Terry and that whole personality clash just still funny to think about to this day.
Yeah, man, it was definitely a personality clash to say the least. I remember there was I kind of had a feeling there was problems brewing was when it was after that game against Colorado. I think Subban turned over the puck in overtime, and it cost them the game. And I remember Terry like went to the media and called out Subban right away, and I think that's when things started to kind of turn backwards, right? Personally, like I think again, it's just a sense of professionalism. I think there's better ways to handle, you know, your players instead of, especially with the media, like they'll just take anything and run with it, right? So the second you give them any little bit of room like that, they're gonna have a heyday on that player or the team or whatever, right? So I think it's just better to, if you know, personally, I don't know how Marty handles the players, right? Like I'm not in, we're not in the room there. So maybe he probably has a way of handling them and we don't know, or maybe he does yell, like we don't know, right? It's just like we're kind of on the outside, but I think he's very professional in a lot of ways.
I agree, and also like with Marty's professionalism, something I want to mention is that just came to mind is something Pezzetta said when he was on the Sick podcast with Tony Marinaro recently. He said some stuff with Marty, yeah, that Marty will usually pull a player one on one in a room, and then he will show him like some of the plays they made that game. He said, like, "Do you think this was the best hockey play on the ice?" And sometimes the player will give them their perspective, and Marty said, "Like, this is, I think that was a good read, but I think you could have read this play a bit better in this way or that way." It feels refreshing to hear that come from players when you have coaches who give you that good feedback and can teach you a lot.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like even like here again, going back to Tarian and Subban, I remember there was a very famous and viral 24 CH clip. I think Subban turned over the
Oh
puck
yeah.
in the neutral zone, and he was in the video room with Terrian. Terrian's just like cussing him out, like completely like cussing him out, swearing at him. Like it's like it was kind of like sad to see, you know. Like I mean, yeah, like he needs to be held accountable, but like I think the lengths he went was a little bit over the top, right? And some of the things he said, and you know, obviously PK handled it well, and but I think again, Marty probably would have been like, okay, what was your what did you think? Like again, what was your perspective, right? The fact that he listens is a great thing. So that's definitely again the great thing of having like a more modern coach, you can say.
I agree. Well said. And also, I just wanted to move on to another topic right now. So there was George Larocque made the hockey world, or mainly the Habs fan base, go nuts because of some interesting comments he made about Pierre-Luc Dubois for Kirby Duck. I want to know, well, would you do it or would you not? Because this is just
No,
all interesting stuff. Same here. I would
no.
not.
I trust me. I would. Me as much as the next Habs fan, I would love to see Pierre Luc Dubois in a Habs uniform. Personally, I don't know if I want to give up those kind of assets for him. I'd rather wait when he becomes a free agent, right? And maybe 2 years from now, I believe he's going to be a unrestricted free agent. I'd rather wait 2 years when maybe Montreal is a little bit more of a. I mean, he's like we've said before, like we hopped on your game, and like he said Montreal is where he wants to be pretty much. He's pretty much said that he wants to be there, right? But maybe if 2 years from now, when the Habs are a little bit more developed and have more of a like a stable roster and like a structured roster, I guess, whatever word you want to use, maybe they'll be a little bit more of an attractive landing spot, right, for him and maybe for other free agents, right? So personally, I don't know if I want to give up Doc. I personally wouldn't do it. That's like what George said is probably the biggest hot take I've ever seen. I wouldn't do it. Just Kirby Doc's just gonna be something special, and we just acquired him in a trade, so I don't know why we trade him again, unless it was for like Connor McDavid, which obviously would never freaking happen. Like that's just pipe dream, and don't take that seriously, guys. I'm just hypothetically speaking, but it just I don't know, no, and I hope Kirby Doc doesn't. I hope Kirby Doc takes that rumor with a grain of salt because he's such a great player, and he's not going anywhere. Fuck no.
For the reasons you said, like, and I completely agree. I would not make that trade because it's like in 2 years, like we're going to be a much better team, and we'd be able to get Dubois for a much lower price. Like we just have to throw him some money in free agency. It depends on how the cap goes up with escrow and all that.
Yeah, escrow. Gotta love that escrow.
Yeah, players like their salaries get taxed just to keep Arizona and Florida financially stable.
That is nuts,
I
man.
still understand how the Coyotes are in Arizona still.
Oh well, I mean, let's hop right into that then. Going into the 32 thoughts. Elliot Friedman, I think you were saying to me,
Oh, the
Damon.
Gary Bettman media availability,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. You want to go into that, Damon?
Yeah, this is just some interesting stuff that happened in this media availability. So Gary Bettman was asked some questions about certain situations, and Gary Bettman, he would talk to the just overview quickly just before we get into the deep in the conversation. He said about goalie interference, talked about the Arizona Coyotes, Quebec Nordiques, and all that kind of stuff. And first, the Arizona Coyotes bit, which annoys me a lot because this team is a professional hockey league team playing in a university arena. Gary Bettman's bragging that it's sold out, but through people I know mutually, do you want to know how much a front row seat costs there?
Under 20
$15
bucks.
American.
That's really good for NHL hockey, guys. I mean, that you would never find a front row seat in Canada for that price. So
I live in Ottawa, and if I wanted to go to the Canadian Tire Center and I was to look for a seat with 15 American, I probably can't even get into, I don't know, maybe the 200s at most, but that is just ridiculous. 15 American for front row seats in an NHL hockey game. That is just unbelievably embarrassing. And Gary Bettman's bragging that they're selling out, and he's trying to convince he's trying to convince the city of Arizona to get them a bigger stadium, and he even said that he would also consider giving them a draft and an all-star game if they go through with the vote and they keep the Coyotes in Arizona. There's other cities that are more deserving.
Uh,
There's Houston, and then there's the Quebec Nordiques. But with the Quebec Nordiques, there's of course division realignment. Man, this shit just gets me fired up every time.
it's just so like insane. Like, yeah, I want to read this comment here. We have bigger crowds in Laval. You're right. You're right, my friend. It's so true. Laval playoff games were selling out at like freaking 30,000 seats or whatever it is. Like, I'm probably wrong there, but somewhere around there. It's craziness, man. Like, I can't believe like how much money the Coyotes have like costed the league. Like, they're just a terrible investment, you know? Like, I don't understand why he wants to keep them there. Like, personally, don't get me wrong, I would love to go to Mullet Arena. Front row seats are that cheap. I would love to go there, like make content and do all that fun stuff, watch a game. But like, man, it's just for an NHL team, that's pretty embarrassing. You know, I find that to be pretty embarrassing. Like, I said it even on the internet, like on social media, when like the Mullet Arena was first like released and all that stuff, right? And I remember like looking at the change rooms were like barely like functionable or whatever the word for that would be. And it was just pathetic. I'm like, how is this an NHL caliber team? Like, this is embarrassing. A lot of other sports are gonna see this and they're gonna like laugh. Like, it's pathetic, right? Like, and again, this is nothing against the Coyotes players, and you know that's not them. They're kind of just they got to do what they got to do. They got to play the game, right? And you know they have a good future ahead of them. That team, they're got a good process going there. But it's just the league. Just I don't understand why like the last 10, 11 years, why Gary Bettman has just tried so hard to keep that like that team in that city. Just, I don't get it. Like, I've heard some pretty crazy theories of maybe why they're still there, but like I don't even know if like they sound pretty crazy, but honestly nothing would surprise me now. So
Yeah. Like I'll tell you this for sure. These guys have more attendance when they're in the playoffs than the Coyotes do.
67s? Yeah, oh god, yeah. Yeah, like North Bay battalions too, like any OHL team with like, you know, has a pretty big following. Halifax Mooseheads sell out every night and like are way more successful than the Coyotes. Like what is this, man? Like it's just, you know, I don't know. It's just this is Gary Bettman's NHL, right? That's all I'm gonna say.
It's Gary Bettman's NHL, and we're just living and laughing at some of the things in it.
That's it, man. I mean, I don't know. I like. I remember hearing rumors that after the Kyle Beach thing that happened last year, obviously the lawsuit and all that very tragic stuff. I heard rumors of like it was speculation though. Obviously, I don't think anything's going to happen, but it was speculation that you know maybe the owners didn't trust Bettman going forward with his leadership after what happened with this. But again, that was a year and a half ago, and I mean, I don't think anything's really going to change. But that'd be great for the league if he steps down, or you know, the owners just vote him out. But I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I know what report you're talking about now that you mentioned it, because I remember right after the whole Kyle Beach stuff came out, I think it was Alan Walsh who said that owners and managers and coaches around the league started to lose a lot of trust in Gary Bettman with everything that has been going on. And even just want to go back to that Kyle Beach situation just for a second, because I remember when Rick Westhead was meeting the Don Fear and Gary Bettman through the media, Don Fear and Gary Bettman tried to skip Rick Westhead's questions, and he was the lead investigator on that situation. And then I don't remember the question that he asked, but Gary Bettman questioned his reporting, which was absolutely disgraceful in my mind. No, yeah. I find like a lot of the mentality, a lot of the people who work in the NHL right now, I think they're dinosaurs to speak professionally, and I think there needs to be a lot of changes that need to come because you have Gary Bettman who's been doing this job for so long, and I think he needs to go. Someone younger needs to come in who understands the issues that hockey hides, and hockey isn't perfect. There's still a lot of changes that need to come, and someone to make those changes.
You know who would be a great commissioner for the NHL?
Who?
PK Subban.
Oh yeah, PK as a commissioner, he brings so much personality to the game. I would love
Oh,
it.
that's what I mean, right? They need a guy like that that will, just grow the game in that way, right? Like they need someone like, who's like that would honestly make hockey the most fun sport. Like and PK Subban is already a very big celebrity, not just in the hockey world, but like as a whole. Like even if you're not a hockey fan, you know who PK Subban is. Like he's made his mark, and he has pretty high influence in that way, right? Like he has a very like his influence goes a long way. So having a guy like him, hey PK, if you're listening to this, maybe make your pitch whenever that time comes, man. That'd be something special, for sure.
Yeah, and also the press conferences would be so much more entertaining with PK. Like any reporter, hey, bring it on. Gary Bettman's like, so you have an issue with goal interference. Maybe mad about the results, but our referees got the call right 110% of the times. Okay,
Yeah,
there's no
same old
issue with the goaltending
bullshit.
interference. The referees.
Kind of going into that goalie interference thing, like I find like there's just no consistency with that whole thing. Like it's like this is goalie interference, but this isn't. But it's there's no consistency now. It's to the point where nobody knows what goalie interference is anymore. It's kind of like I don't mean to like change like a sport, but like in the NFL, there's like so many like inconsistencies when it comes like a complete catch and like catching the ball that like there's just so much inconsistency now where it's just nobody knows like what's gonna count and what's that. Like it's just so frustrating to see like with the goalies. It's like nobody knows. Like honestly, the refs don't even know sometimes. Like players don't know. Like sometimes maybe like no consistency on that point. It's just really it's just hard to see because it's really costed teams games at times.
I agree. And actually, there's a question here from Where My Chicken. How do you think PK would relate to the owners? Like, this is a good question for us
Oh, that's
because
a good point. Yeah.
I mean, I think it would have to be a co-thing with Subban if he was doing it with a business person who understands like the more sports management aspect of the sport, and he could take care of the media and a lot of that, and a lot more of the just a lot more of the hockey side of stuff, and he has someone take care of more of the numbers and financial side of stuff. I think PK, if you were to do it, I think the more that you bring up this point, I think it would have to be a duo thing with Subban and some business person who I don't know.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. That's a good question too. I never really thought of it like that. That's a good perspective to have because yeah, like maybe again, maybe he knows the business side of it. Maybe he doesn't as well as maybe some other people would, but you never know. Like I mean, honestly, anything at this point would be better than Gary Bettman. So to say it in the most politically correct term ever, that's
Yeah.
anything's better than him at this point. So
Like also not
I'll
many of the
take it.
players like Bettman as well.
Oh God, yeah, most of them don't like him, and a lot of them have been pretty outspoken about not liking him, which is, I mean, like, can be pretty brave at times because there's players. I don't want to name names, but like I heard some players that got blacklisted by the league um, during the last collective bargaining agreement negotiations in 2012. So it was like 11 years ago, and there were some players that were very aggressive reps and never saw the NHL ever again. So it's yeah, very brave guys for doing that. So very brave.
I agree. Like that's a good point. Like about like players getting blacklisted. Like that's something like you don't want to see in any sport. Like players getting
Oh,
blacklisted for
never.
disagreeing with a commissioner. Like I think like as a commissioner, like you also have to maintain an open mind. Gary Bettman does not really seem to have a very open mind when it comes to a lot of things in the sport.
No, not really. He's just like he. I guess you could argue the fact that he's grown the game in the United States, but at the same time though, like yeah, he has, but there's been quite a few failed experiments and a few that are currently failing experiments, sorry, in the league, right? So it's just I don't know. Like I understand because in Canada here, like we there's the market. The market's never going to change. It's always going to be the same. But like in the U.S., like I understand it's a big market and you want to try to create new fans, right? But I mean, I think the NHL. One thing, the positive thing I will say about the with Bettman is getting ESPN and TNT was probably a great thing for broadcasting American like hockey in America. Sorry, it was definitely a big step to growing the game there.
I agree. Like TNT as well. It's a good point about ESPN and TNT because I think like their on-air talent. They have a lot of entertaining personalities who
Oh yeah,
want to make you watch the intermission. Because I'll say this, like though about Hockey Night in Canada. Now that we mentioned intermissions, in Hockey Night in Canada, sometimes in recent years, I haven't been a fan of their intermissions because
me too.
it's not always the most entertaining and not very much happens. And they talk mainly about the Leafs more than anything else. Like the Leafs won't even be playing, and they'll spend 10 minutes in the intermission talking about the Leafs, and then they're like maybe the other 7 or 8 minutes talking about just the other games going on that night, which I don't find very entertaining. Just talk about the games going on at that time, which would be much better. But TNT, they bring good personality into it all the time. Like Rick Talkie, who's now the coach of the Vancouver Canucks. He had Paul Bizanet and like all those guys, Wayne Gretzky, and then I think it was I remember Charles Barkley. I'm pretty sure came on for a guest
Yeah,
appearance
he
one
did.
time. That was
Yeah,
entertaining.
I bet, man. Paul Bissonnette's so funny on that panel. He says some pretty like out of pocket stuff sometimes, but like people love it though, right? So I actually met him in the summer. He was in Toronto here. He was at a doing a Spit and Chicklets event here. It was pretty cool. My cousin and I went, and I met him briefly, and I took a picture with him. And really, really good guy. He like took the time to like talk to everybody, and even to me. Like I talked to him. I told him I was, like I do like the Habs Tonight stuff and podcasting, and gave me some good advice. And he's a good guy. I know he's very polarizing. With on the internet. Sorry, he's very polarizing on the internet, but I think he's a good guy.
I agree.
Yeah,
Like
good guy.
I agree. Like also he has that personality that you want in the game as long. Same with PK Subban as well.
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely both of them are really good brand ambassadors for the league. I guess you can say like they really again just Biz is man. That I mean he people could say what they want about his hockey career, but the way he is and his personality when he was a player led to a lot of great things after his hockey career. So everything is a blessing in disguise, right? So
Yeah, I agree. And also, I just want to switch gears a bit, like to something else that he
sure.
said. He wanted a touch. He also Gary Bettman was also asked about the possibility of the Quebec Nordiques returning because he previously had meetings in 2021, but I guess nothing really came out of it. So something
Right.
that I've been thinking about a bit is like the division realignment, and also Jeff Molson apparently wants the Nordiques back and fully supports it. How what kind of impact I've been thinking about this? Like, you think the Nordiques would have coming back to the NHL? Because I think it would be such a good impact, and you have a rivalry recently with Montreal. You have somewhat of a rivalry with Ottawa,
Oh, it
and
would.
then yeah, it
Yeah.
would be so nice.
It would be great. Yeah, it'd be great for the game. It'd be great for, obviously to have the Battle of Quebec back. Like my dad used to tell me all the time, the Battle of Quebec was like worse than any like worse than any rivalry like in the league at the time. Like there may be some people that are watching they remember the Good Friday game. I think it was called the Good Friday Massacre with the in the '80s with the Quebec Nordiques and the Habs in the playoffs, and like it was just huge Donnybrook like before the game and during the game, just complete mess, right? And they just bitter rivals, right? So I think like bringing the good thing. I think it'd be great for again that the Habs and Nordiques would be a great marketing thing for our Canadian markets here for the NHL, and I mean Quebec City's just dying to get a hockey team back, right? So it's would be great for everybody, but the one thing I've been saying about that, is do they have an arena that can, facilitate an NHL team, right? I know they have I think it's the Pepsi Colisée, where I think that's what it's called. I could be
Or
wrong. Correct
Center
me.
Videotron.
Yeah, yeah, where the Ramparts play, I think.
I think that Pepsi
Uh,
Colisée is where the Ramparts live. I think they have
yeah,
Videotron Center where they've played some preseason games to the Habs.
yeah. So it's like, is it a big enough stadium for an NHL team? Or that's the big debate.
I
Would
think it
they
is.
have to? Yeah, you think so?
It's like 20 or 30, 25,000 seats, I'm pretty sure.
It's not bad. Yeah, I mean that's like a decent sized market, right? Like for a decent sized market team. So personally, I'd be cool with Quebec coming back, or even like moving the Coyotes to Houston. I've always said this. I think the Houston Coyotes has a really cool like kick to it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it, either way, I think it'd be a great decision. Personally, I know the popular opinion is, let's get the Quebec Nordiques back, but there's a lot of good options at play, but will Bettman swallow his pride and move the Arizona Coyotes out of Arizona? That's the big question.
Yeah, but Gary Bettman needs to learn from a Jedi Master, maybe Obi-Wan or Yoda. Let go. He's holding on to this Coyotes team's way too long.
Yeah,
I
he's
think
holding on to it for dear life. I don't understand. Again, I went on that little mini rant there. I don't
yeah.
understand what it is, but hey, it is what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but just funny like everything in Star Wars somehow links to like not everything, but some things in Star Wars link to Gary Bettman. Like Obi-Wan and
Oh
Yoda, all the
man.
Jedi Masters told their Padawans to let go of attachments. Just Gary Bettman, if you had a Jedi Master or if you were a Jedi Padawan, let go of the Coyotes.
I wonder if he's seen Star Wars. He probably doesn't seem. He seems like probably a really boring guy, so he probably doesn't watch any movies. So
Oh, I don't know if he maybe sits there and watches The Godfather all day, like on repeat.
that would honestly that if that was the case, hey, Godfather's a great movie. I can't knock on somebody for liking that movie. That's a solid
It
film.
is, yeah.
Oh
But I
yeah.
mean, like on repeat though, like endless in the loop.
Oh, endless. Yeah, no, I'd get sick of it after a while. But let's. I want to get switch gears a little here. Go back to the Habs news a little. The other day, I was watching some of the Habs YouTube content on. I think it's Habs TV. They call it.
Yeah,
Um, I thought it was pretty cool. They gave Brendan Gallagher like a little 10-year anniversary interview, and it was really cool. They kind of like had like a whole nostalgia with like all of his like Instagram posts and like teammates over the years, and I thought that was like a really cool thing. And it's been exactly 10 years since Galley's suited up for the Habs, and obviously he's been a very popular, fan favorite player, right? So,
yeah,
again, happy, I guess you could say anniversary to Brendan Gallagher and the Habs.
yeah,
Again, one of my favorite players that I've ever seen play in the uniform. Great guy. Just I met him personally like a long, long time ago. Great guy. Just heart and soul player, and the way he is on the ice is the exact same who he is off the ice, man. It's great stuff. Love the guy.
yeah.
Love,
It's
love
a good
everything
point.
about him.
It's a good point you bring up with Brendan Gallagher. Like 10 years, it's amazing. I just want to ask, what was probably your favorite Brendan Gallagher moment as a Hab?
Oh man, there's a lot, but um, honestly, just thinking of it right off the bat was that Winter Classic goal against the Bruins. That
Oh yeah,
was iconic. That was like that season didn't really go well. They were starting to slip in the standings at that time, but I remember saying this to my brother like after that season. Like, yeah, we didn't make the playoffs, and things are not looking great. But that win against the Bruins on the Winter Classic game was like just the highlight of the season. That just made it all a little bit more bearable.
yeah. I think that was a good one, but I'm gonna go with two if that's okay. It's a kind of a
Sure.
tie between his Game 6 winner against Ottawa
Oh
in the
yeah.
2015 playoffs, because I live in Ottawa and like there was a lot of Sens fans in my school. And they're like, "Oh, your Habs are gonna lose. Your Habs are gonna lose. They're garbage. You only have one player. That's it, and they're not gonna outscore the Senators." And I thought, you know what? Wait till Game 6. Let's see what happens here. And then Brendan Gallagher, of course. I think that was one of here, but also my other favorite was in the 2021 playoff run. That like that whole Vegas series where he kept Pacioretty, Stone, and Stevenson off the score sheet, and then the people in the media were like, "Okay, these three don't have any points. What are they doing? They're not putting up any points." And the media kind of took it and run with it, but they got the most important points in the end because Gallagher, Lehkonen, and Deneau all got Gallagher and Lehkonen both got assists, and Deneau got the game-winning goal against. Lehkonen got the game-winning goal. What am I saying here?
Yeah. No
Against
worries.
Vegas in that Game 6, I think. Because that was a moment that I don't think it's I don't think it's ever gonna really happen often in sports. Right? Like you're not really gonna always see like year in year out that your favorite team goes to the finals unless you're like a fan of Real Madrid or like a bandwagon fan of any of those sports teams. And
Yeah.
I get annoyed by Real Madrid fans. Let's just say that. Like I asked one Real Madrid fan, name me 5 players on the Champions League team last year, and they said, "Oh, Cristiano Ronaldo, Karim
Oh, there it
Benzema,
is.
Vinicius Jr., Zinedine Zidane." It's like Zidane doesn't even play anymore, and Ronaldo
He's the
plays for
coach.
Man United.
That's so funny. Yeah, man. I honestly though, like thinking about it now, that's a really good point though about him having an apple on that game-winning goal. I think pretty much every Habs fan can remember where they were when that goal like happened, right? I remember I was at a friend's house and we were watching it in his garage, and I remember screaming a bunch of expletives, and I think the whole street heard me. I was jumping up and down, and it was great. So that was definitely, yeah, that's an all time moment. I'll always, yeah, that Stanley Cup playoff run. I think I can speak for the whole fan base. We'll remember that for the rest of our lives.
Yeah,
I know I will.
what was your reaction in this comment right here to the goal in
Yeah,
Game 7 against the Leafs?
yeah, that goal was nice too. He just brought it up the wing and just shot it 5 hole on Soup, and yeah, I was fired up. Like I remember thinking like after that first goal, I was thinking, okay, I think we got this. Like just let's just keep playing well. Maybe score an insurance goal, and see how it goes. And they did. Obviously Carey Price like played phenomenal game as usual, and the boys were just clicking. Right, everyone was like I don't know what it was about that team, but it was just working. Everything was clicking. Like every line was working, and like they had great. Like I remember Luke Richardson did a great job of you know um, just line matchups in that third round against Vegas. Like just it was textbook, like just complete textbook. Right? So
I agree, and also everything that came out of Pierre Gervais' book, like with Luke Richardson, now you mentioned his name, it's like you said, I think this team had something absolutely special, like a special bond that could not be broken, and like they were all there, not just playing for themselves, they were playing for each other to win that cup. Like that's how committed this team was in the playoffs compared to a lot of other teams. And I'm just gonna circle back to this moment here in Game 7 against the Leafs. Like I was like, yeah, and then I had to realize, okay, the game's not over, so I had to calm myself back down, think, okay, just hold on to this lead. And then the Corey Perry goal happened. I'm like, yeah. I thought, okay, there's still another period of play. And we're in the Leafs barn, and the Leafs have some fans here, all medical workers. So just gotta stay calm. And that final 5 minutes, I was like, pretty much. I don't know. Remember the ending of that movie Miracle, where like the players in the bench were like banging their sixes, they were playing shutdown defense like against the words, like, yeah, let's go, let's shut them down. That was pretty much me, like another shutdown play. And then as soon as Toffoli scored, I was like, I just jumped out of my chair celebrating.
yeah,
Thinking, oh my
yeah,
god, I can't wait to see how the Leafs Nation reacts to this after they said we'd lose in 3.
I know, right? Like I remember my dad and I were watching that. I think when Toffoli scored the third goal, like yeah, we just went nuts. And we're like, I can't believe we just beat the Leafs and like we made a comeback on them. Like that's like the craziest thing ever, right? Like I still couldn't believe it all, man. The next day at work, my former boss now at the time he was a Leafs fan, and I remember walking in just with a big smile on my face, and he's like, Adrian, I don't want to hear it. I'm like, I was like, I didn't even say anything, man. Like I'm just sitting here. He already knew what was going. He already knew what the elephant in the room was. It was great, man. It was a definitely a with a lot of the uncertainty in the world at the time, and there's a lot of sadness and depression and a lot of division in some ways. It was nice to see like that playoff run, and see like the whole Habs Habs Nation come together. Even like all I know a lot of people and just across Canada were just wanted to see the Habs win the cup. Right, it was just cool to see everyone come together for that one playoff run.
I agree. And it was just amazing because that was listed as one of the most iconic sports moments in recent Canadian history. And I
Absolutely.
still think it's one of the most iconic in hockey history because that team, if it was a normal season, on paper would not have made the playoffs. But I had that feeling that we had all the pieces to go deep in the playoffs. But it was just about Ducharme assembling the pieces correctly. And I remember there was an iconic Craig Button quote, which made me laugh as soon as I saw it. I don't think the Canadians can even win one game against the Leafs. I was like,
Yeah,
have you even seen any of those games we lost to the Leafs this season? We were pretty much fielding half an AHL roster and half the NHL roster because so many guys were injured.
yeah, yeah. It
And we
was
still
tough.
managed to make it close in those games.
It was another thing too about that top four that Montreal had. Like, it was just unstoppable. Like Weber, Petrie, Edmondson, and Sherratt. Like, that was just they were just lights out. That's another thing too. Like, I loved about that team was like they were scoring, but like man, that top four was just un like fucking believable. Pardon my language, but they were just
I know.
unbelievable, man. Like I couldn't believe it. I'm not like it was just such a great defensive performance, and it was great to see, man. And again, I still think about that. I mean, it's going in on 2 years now. 2 years ago, it was the playoff run, right? And I'm just still thinking about it now. How it just time flies by so fast. But man, what a time it was to be a
Yeah,
Habs
I
fan.
still can't believe how close they got. Like, it's like 2 years. It feels like yesterday they were in the cup finals, and like it's like been like 2 years. It's just amazing, like how like you said how time flies. And I think like looking back, like that team was just actually like I think a lot of people didn't give that team the credit they deserve for how good they were.
Hmm. I agree. And yeah, man, that loss against Tampa though, that was a game. I'm still personally, I'm still not 100% over it because they were 3 games away from winning the Stanley Cup, and man, oh man, but just like the two most heartbreaking losses I think I felt in a while was the Habs. It was Game 5 against Tampa, and the Blue Jays Game 3 of wild card series last year. Those were the two most heartbreaking sports games I've felt recently. So kind of having a hard time getting over those. So
Yeah, I'm still having issues getting over the game 5. Like I know like I can't change it. I can't go back in time and change things, but like that's still heartbreaking because of how close they got, and especially like against a juggernaut team like Tampa. Like I know it was only 5 games, but I think game 2 is a game looking back. Like if Ducharme had played some of his cards, I mean Ducharme and Richardson, they played some of their cards in a bit better situations. I think we could have won that game, and like some decision making made. I think we could have won that game, and then game 5, like I felt like there were some missed calls on the ice. Like there were some sequences where I was surprised the referees wouldn't make a penalty call. And I
mhm.
remember in the third period, like I'm gonna admit this, I kind of got mad at the refs because I remember after a whistle, Yanni Gord, I think he elbowed or shouldered Suzuki in the face, and there was like no call. I was thinking, okay, like what the heck? But like like at that point, like I kind of like expected like the referees like to make mistakes like that, but
Mhm.
like it's just amazing like how far they got either way in the cup finals.
Yeah, man, it was definitely something to. Again, something I'll always remember for the rest of my life, man. It was, maybe we're not. I don't know when we're gonna see something like that again, but 2014 was something special, right? And it was a great time to be a Habs fan, but man, 2021 was something else too. So yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
that
yeah, go ahead.
2014 run was amazing as well. Like sweeping Tampa was so nice, and then beating Boston as well. Man, that Boston series was just something else with the intensity. Like I had so many nerves going to that game 7 because
Oh
I knew whoever would score first would win, and then I heard on the radio that Dale Weiss was involved with the play, and then for some reason the audio cut out because we went to my dad and I went to go get gas, and then when my dad turned the car back on, we hear Dale Weiss gets the game's first goal because like the commentary was a little shattered. And I'm like, yes, we scored the first goal. Okay, so play good the rest of the game, then we win it.
yeah. Yeah, that was that series too. Like they didn't win the cup that year, but them beating the Bruins in that series, I was just filled with so much animosity. Was close enough to a Stanley Cup for me, to be honest. So I'll always remember that. But
Same here. Like I gotten
yeah.
so happy during those Stanley Cup wins, but sometimes I just wonder how crazy I would go if we won the Stanley Cup. I don't know if it'll be as crazy as my draft lottery video, but it
that
might.
that draft lottery video was awesome, dude.
My soul literally left my body in that moment, but I wonder, like, how much more can my soul leave my body
Oh man,
if
we
we
got
win the
into
Stanley
a
Cup?
We gotta do a draft lottery video this year too. That'd be
Yeah,
fucking
and
awesome.
hopefully Florida loses some more games so we have a better chance at Bedard.
I don't know, man. The Panthers have been playing good lately, so I've been watching the standings, but they're playing good lately. But we'll see. I wanted to go into the trade rumors we were talking about. I heard some interesting ones. There was, I think on Twitter, Pierre LeBrun said that apparently the Habs were offered a first rounder for Josh Anderson. I'm not sure if this is like old news or not. I swear I might have heard this before. I keep hearing Joel Edmondson's name a lot, and then there's some other names around the league like Anton Khudobin and Nick Bustad, and I think there was one more you said too, David,
Nick, yeah, I think there was
for Seattle
Carson
Kraken.
Soucy,
Right.
like
Yeah.
potentially because he's not negotiating with the Kraken, so they're either going to keep him and then maybe not re-sign him, or they might just trade him and get what they can from at this moment.
What do you think? So all those rumors there. What are your take on some of those?
Edmonds, well, actually, you know what? I'm not going to start with Edmonds. I'm going to start with Anderson because I think people I saw on Habs social media overreacted. Like, we should have taken that first, but all we know is a first round pick. But there's a wide variety between where a first can be. It could either be the 32nd pick in the draft, or it could be maybe a top 10 pick. And I'd say if it was a for sure a top 10 pick for Anderson, I would probably do it if I was Kent Hughes. But if it was a late mid or late first, you'd probably be wanting another asset for Anderson because there's not many players like him anymore without that much speed, skill, that explosive ability and acceleration when he gets the puck and stride as well. So I would like overall I'd say this with Anderson just to keep it short. If it's a top 10 pick, if that first round pick was a top 10 or top 5 pick, I would do it in a heartbeat. But if that was like anything where between like 11 to 11 to later on in the first round, I would probably want another asset, whether it be a good prospect or it be a second round pick as well. Now, I think there's just not enough transparency around that whole situation to make like certain assumptions, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point. I totally agree with you too. How it's with that situation. You don't know if you want to trade a guy like Josh Anderson because again, just what he brings to the table, right? Like, there's not many, like you said, there's not many players like him that are big, fast, strong, explosive speed, create scoring chances, drives in that. It's hard to find guys like that, and I do really like Josh Anderson, right? So, you know, uh, I mean, I heard rumors last year too. Like I might have heard the same thing, like from around the league. But personally, like if it's just like a late first rounder, like is it really worth it? Because you just don't know if Josh Anderson's gonna go play on another team, and he just completely like just blows up, right? So it's just you don't want to take that risk, and I just think like keeping him put is not a bad decision. He's still a really young player too, so even like before he was on the Habs, I always wanted him on the Habs like one day, and like when the trade happened, like for Domi, I was like pretty ecstatic, right? And because I knew who he was prior, and I knew we were getting a good player in return. So unless again, if it's like an offer you can't refuse kind of thing, maybe you gotta kind of go with your your you got to go with your head on that one and just do it. But if it's not really worth giving him up for it, then you definitely got to keep him. And I think he can fit long term somewhere in the Habs roster.
I agree. It's like you said, like about like keeping him long term, and also like the lack of transparency around that whole situation. So I just think it's pretty interesting, like what's going to happen to Anderson, but also Edmondson. This might be a hot take, but I think without as we know, he's a leader in that locker room, but I don't really see like as much of a need for him in the team right now as much as we would in past, because his best hockey is playoff hockey, Edmondson, and we all know how good he was in the playoffs in 2021. But he really doesn't have as much as an effect on the regular season as he does in the playoffs. So let's just say a team like Edmonton, which I think could use another defenseman, or maybe the Leafs. I know they're a rival, but they probably want to use another defenseman. If we can get a first round pick or a good prospect, I would probably do that trade in a heartbeat, because we still have a lot of good young defensemen coming up in the future. Like, you never know, next season we could probably find someone on the market, or Now, the more I think about it, you never know if Nick Beaudin could potentially become something as well. And I think Beaudin is an interesting prospect because he had a lot of high hopes in Chicago, but just never really gelled well in that system. So I'm thinking maybe he could come up for the Habs in the future. Now there's just a lot of interesting pieces when it comes to Edmondson as when in talking points about the whole situation.
Yeah, that's a good point, Damon. I mean, like personally, I personally I love Joel Edmondson. Like you can see he's a great guy to have in the room, and he's a great leader, and obviously playoff performer. Won a Stanley Cup with the Blues in 2019, and was pretty stellar for Montreal in that in that 2021 playoff run. Um, Thinking about it too, like our blue line is very log jammed right now, and you gotta like what do they do? There's so many like variables, right? Like we have a lot of young defensemen coming up the ropes, and then there's some vets that we don't know like what their time is, like how much they have left with the Habs, right? So he's a great guy to have, but if if the price is right, then if you're Kent Hughes, maybe you gotta think about maybe making taking an offer for him. I know Edmonton's always looking for defensemen, so we could probably kind of do like what we did with Kulak last year, get like a second or third for him, and kind of see what you can for that.
I agree, but I think with the price though with Edmonton, since he was more proven than Kulak most of the time, my guess is it's probably going to be a late first. So
Could
I
be,
think
yeah.
I still think like the value could be interesting. And then there was also an interesting mock trade that was put out there. I think if someone pretended to be an NHL reporter on Twitter and got like the blue check as well and said, "Oh yeah, by the way, Edmonton and Drouin are being traded to Edmonton for a first round pick in Tyler Tullio, who is one of their better prospects out there." And I'm wondering if now that I think about that, I wonder if that could be a realistic trade situation because the more I think about it, I think it makes sense for both sides. Now we get a good prospect and a pick, and then they get Drouin and probably 50% retained, who could play well in the middle six role out there in Edmonton, and then Joel Edmondson who will play a good role for them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you never know, right? Like, I mean, I know like Jonathan Drouin is a player, obviously, like like consistency has been a problem at times in his tenure in Montreal, and obviously he went through his anxiety, which was very sad to see, right? But Jonathan Drouin is a player with like a very unique skill set who could be a great piece for a team that's trying to make a playoff push. Like maybe like the Oilers or like a team like that that's kind of in the hunt, right? So you got to think, he'd be a great fit somewhere. I remember saying this before, but I'd love if Colorado was still in the mix, right? I haven't really seen much of those standings lately, but I've been more focusing on the Eastern Conference with the Habs and the Panthers there. But I'd love to see Drouin come back, be reunited with Nathan McKinnon in Colorado. That would be a pretty cool sight to see. Personally, I don't know what the like how realistic that is, mind you, but it'd be a cool thing to see, or or even see Joe playing on a team in the playoff mix or a playoff contender, as like a middle line forward. It'd be great for him to do that, or even like a guy like Edmondson too. Play on a team that's in the mix in the playoffs, or a team that's ready to win the cup, right? And you just need a couple of pieces to get it going.
I agree, and I think, and actually, and just I just looked at the standings quickly. Just I
Excuse me.
was looking down for a second, and Colorado's actually just in the last wild card spot, but they have a few games in
Oh,
hand on the Oilers, who are just behind them. So I
maybe.
think that would be a good, interesting destination for him, for Joe, because like you said, being reunited with Nathan McKinnon, and also Dominic Ducharme talked about their chemistry on I think it was Chris Nyland's podcast, and he was saying that they had unreal chemistry out there in Halifax.
Yeah.
And also, I think Sean Monahan could be a good Kadri replacement. That's going to be a hot take if he gets traded to the Avs, which they're willing to pay a first round pick. I would take it for this season, for this draft especially.
Yeah, I mean, you know how I feel about Sean Monahan. Like,
I know.
my emotional attachment to, because he's from the same town as me, and a lot of people know the story. But like, I mean, like obviously, if it's the right move, then you got to do. If it's like an offer you can't refuse, you kind of got to do what you got to do. But personally, I would, even if it's like a situation where they say, "Hey, look, like we really like you, like we're gonna try to flop you at the deadline for some assets, but we want to bring you back in the summer," right? If it was something like that, which happens quite a bit actually, mind you.
Yeah, Roman
Um,
Polak a few times with the
Yep,
Leafs.
Thomas Plekanec, right? Got
Yeah.
traded to the Leafs, came back to the Habs right away. Like if that was something that can potentially happen, then that would be amazing. Like personally, Sean Monahan showed how valuable of a player he is. On that second line, centering that second line, how defensively responsible he is, and again, just keep putting up a lot of points too. He was like had like I can't remember exactly what he had. I'm gonna look it up now, but he had like almost 20 points if I'm correct in 20 something games. It was something pretty remarkable, and it was a good comeback story for him. Let me just see here. Let me see what his numbers were. Give me a second, guys.
I actually got it right here.
Yep, 17 points in 25 games, 6 goals, 11 assists. Like that's pretty impressive, for a second line center. That's very good. So whatever happens, obviously my heart says keep him, but if you're Kent Hughes and Brass there, you gotta maybe think about what can get for him, right? But obviously whatever happens, I do respect the decision of Kent Gordon and Jeff Hughes. So
Yeah, like this is the first regime we can say with Kent Hughes, Jeff Gorton, and Marty that we have our full trust in to make any hockey move.
yeah, man. I personally, yeah, I think Anik has said too on our show, and a lot of our other fellow team members here. We've all said like I don't. There hasn't been a trade yet, mind you, yet that has been like made us scratch our heads like we could have gotten a little more for this guy, or that was a bad trade. Like they've made solid hockey moves like all around. So far.
I agree. Like probably the worst one I can think of is the Jeff Petrie trade, but that one I think is not even what I consider a bad trade. Like like your hands kind of being forced because this player wants out of the team,
Yeah.
and you need to get someone back. And Michael Matheson has been good when he's been playing, but he's just so far he's been pretty injury prone, and I'm pretty sure he's been on pace for just under 50 points in a fully healthy season, which is still pretty good in my opinion.
Yeah, man, he's been pretty solid. So, and I remember when the Habs made that trade, you were pretty excited about it. I remember you saying because he played well in that first round series for the Penguins, right? Against I think it was against the Rangers.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, man. He is a great player. He was great with the Panthers back then too, right? And still pretty serviceable player, right? So you never know what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like it's still a serviceable player, but I think more time will tell and how that trade works out. And also we can't forget about like Ryan Paling also got traded in that trade as well. And he's actually playing
Yeah.
well for the Penguins right now, which I'm pretty happy to hear.
Yeah, man. Like I always liked Ryan Paling. I kind of felt bad for him. He didn't really get much of a shot, near the end. Kind of fell out of favor, I guess you could say. Excuse me. He's always been a great hockey player. Obviously, his NHL debut is like something, like that's like written, like that's like Hollywood written all over it. Like scores like 2 goals, scores a shootout winner, whatever it was, like just unreal stuff, right? Like, but again, yeah, going back to him, like I'm really happy he's playing well in Pittsburgh. They're using him and he's got a good role there, so very happy for him.
Yeah, but a funny story, so I should probably mention it. I never even got to watch that game.
Really?
I was at a Sens game that night and they had fan appreciation night. So I like as funny as it sounds, I don't know which trade would have been better if I traded that experience at the game or I got Bobby Ryan stick and a shirt from Brady Kachuk. Like Brady Kachuk threw me a shirt. So
Oh, that's still pretty cool. No, I
yeah.
mean that's a cool
I
experience.
think that like I don't know which experience would be better to trade. Like watching that Ryan Paling 4 goal game or getting a stick from Bobby Ryan and a shirt from Brady Kachuk.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's definitely. Hey, man, you kind of pick or choose which one is good there, right? So,
Yeah, I think they were both
um,
pretty good in the end.
absolutely. Either way would have been a W for you. So,
Yeah.
I
I
want
did
to go
rewatch
back.
that full game later.
What's that, buddy?
I did rewatch that full game later, and man, that was an
Oh, nice.
exciting game.
Oh, it was electric. I remember I was at like a family gathering and we were just sitting on the couch and just seeing this kid light it up, and I'm like, holy shit! Like what a player, right? So, going back into the mix for trade rumors, we mentioned some other ones, Nick Bustad and Anton Khudobin. I remember again, like during the bubble, Anton Khudobin seemed like he was seemed like a pretty good, fringe starter, almost like like a Jack Campbell kind of starter, comparable, kind of goalie, right?
Yeah,
Um, yeah, he led the Stars to the Cup final that postseason, and I mean, obviously now Jake Ottinger is like the number one guy, like no doubt about it, right? He's a star in the making. But what were some of? Did you hear about which teams were in the mix for him at all, Damon? Do you know
I
which team?
didn't. Friedman never listed them specifically which teams were in the mix for Kudobin, but he said teams that need goaltending depth. And I'm just really gonna see like I guess we can just try to speculate which playoffs teams may want him.
Yeah, I mean, I could see a team like Edmonton because
Yeah,
um, they always need goaltending, right? It seems like that's the trend for them, right? It could be Edmonton. Even just as a good backup to have, right? If you need to rest your starter for quite a few games, or a few games before the playoffs, sorry, and he just he's a guy you could probably lean on for a bit, right? Before the
I
playoffs.
agree. Or even just a third string as well. I think
Yeah.
because I remember Kudobin. I'll tell you this: I nearly forgot he existed last season after like everything last season because he went through such a high in 2020, carrying like the Stars, like you said, to the Stanley Cup Finals, and then he had rough performances last year, and then there were rumors he was going to get traded to the Habs, and then he was placed on waivers in the AHL, and then we haven't really heard his name since. And then Frame's like, oh yeah, by the way, Kudobin teams are going to look at him for a third string option or potential backup option for the playoffs. So
There you go.
that was like, wait, I thought, oh my god, Kudobin's still around.
Yeah, man. I mean, hey, he's a serviceable goalie, even if it's in the American League or as a third or backup goalie in the NHL. He's always been a serviceable guy, and I think he'll be a good fit wherever he goes.
I agree. He may not play much, but like we're saying, but yeah, it'll be a good fit. And also someone else who I think will be a good fit. This is more me speculating. Over in Columbus, I'm sure you know Jonas Corposalo, the goalie that Subban scored from center ice on.
Yes, he's a
That
good
was
goalie.
an iconic moment. Subban scoring from center ice and getting a penalty. His
Yeah,
contract's
that was
up at the
bad.
end of this season, and he's making 1.3 million,
That's
which is
it.
very reasonable. Yeah, I think Edmonton also should consider him as an option. I thought about it
Wow,
last deadline, but he was injured, so Edmonton couldn't make a move.
that's crazy. That's a steal. Like that's a great contract for what you're getting out of him. Like he's again, aside from that center ice goal, like he's had a pretty good career. Like that's a steal of a contract. A lot of teams can look for a guy like that, right? And I mean, personally, off the top of my head, aside from Edmonton, I don't really know many which other teams. Sorry, that really need like goaltending depth. Not that I could think of off the top of my head for playoff teams, but he'd be a good fit anywhere realistically, right?
I was also thinking the Rangers as a backup right now because Halak isn't doing very well there. I'm thinking
Yeah,
the Rangers could look to increase to bolster their backup position as well. The more I
yeah,
think
that's
about
not
it
a bad
now and
idea.
get down this rabbit hole of the goalies, backups, and third strings.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. I mean, again, all due respect to Yaroslav Halak, but I think he's pretty much almost near the end, right? So having a guy like Corpusalo would be a good tandem with him and Shosturkin. That'd be a pretty solid tandem.
I agree. That
Yeah,
would be
man.
so nasty. And the Rangers, like if you get suffer a goalie injury, the solution is just going to be pretty simple. It's going to be
Yeah.
Corpusalo, and Corpusalo, I'm pretty sure has the record. I think he actually does hold the record for most saves in a playoff game. Because remember that like five
Yep.
or six overtime game against Tampa in 2020?
Hmm. Yep. I remember that. That was a crazy day. I came home from work that day at like maybe 1:30, and the game started at 12, I think. And it was like 8 o'clock at night, and this game was still going on. I was like, "What is going on here?" I'm like, Holy shit!
Yeah,
It,
and
it was nuts, man.
the Hurricanes and Bruins were still preparing. They were just waiting to play their game, and then the NHL's like, "Yeah, this game went on too long. You guys won't be able to play," because I think they would have to play at
Yeah,
9 o'clock. The
yeah,
NHL's like, "Yeah, everyone back to your hotel rooms."
yeah. I remember that. And I was like, damn, that was crazy. I still can't believe that the NHL. You know what? I got to give the NHL credit. They really managed that bubble playoffs really good. They had zero COVID cases. They had again, it was just like good hockey too. For the guys hadn't played in like 3 to 4 months, right? They hadn't been on really stepped on the ice, and it was really well managed by the NHL. I gotta say that's an NHL dub right there.
I agree that like it's like you said, it's an NHL dub. But one thing I will give him a little criticism for is Brendan Gallagher. I think said some stuff that I found was pretty interesting. He said that the NHL he felt could have given them more time in the gym. Because when a lot of players started playing in the bubble, all of a sudden they were quarantining for a long time and then they started playing in the bubble. They didn't have much time to work out in the gym. So as soon as they started playing, players started getting injured all around. Like
Yeah,
that's my one little nitpick criticism. But I think overall, like you said, that bubble was really well managed, and I think it was really entertaining hockey to watch. And I just liked how I don't know if you saw the bubble series. I really liked how united everyone was in the bubble. Like like there's always rivalries and all that, but everyone was like friends and they were doing like fun activities together. Because there was an interesting bit I saw. I think it was in the Toronto bubble where some of the teams were playing soccer together
mhm.
at the BMO field, which was
Oh
something you
yeah,
probably won't ever really see. But I think the Carolina Hurricanes and the Boston Bruins, they were just playing some fun little soccer all around on their off day. And then I remember in the Edmonton bubble, I think the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars went golfing together on one of their days off. Like it
yeah.
was pretty cool that the NHL had that kind of activities for them to do outside of the bubble.
Yeah, man. I think also too, like, because there was a lot of things going on in the world at the time, and kind of keep the guys, in a good mental headspace. I think they provided those activities, which was really good, like you said. I do remember one thing though from that Habs and Flyers series was when Gallagher's like his teeth were all bloodied up, and yeah, that's an iconic picture of him screaming at the bed at the ref with like his teeth here like all like just red, like dark red. I was like, oh my god, this is textbook Gallagher right here.
That was
Yeah,
it's actually also a pretty funny one. I remember Niskanen. I remember Gallagher's like, and then the referee just
yeah,
looked away, and then Gallagher just didn't shut up and was shouting at the Flyers bench and Vigneault. And then Vigneault, he's one of the most polarizing coaches in my mind because I think tactically he's a smart coach,
yeah,
but just the things he says to defend his players, he goes beyond weird lengths to defend his players. I remember like the whole Kreider situation, and then he called out a hockey play, and then there was like the Gallagher was like, "Oh, Gallagher, like, oh, he was a shorter guy, so that's what you expect when you get cross checks. Like, maybe your guy should not have been cross checking in the first place." And then
yeah.
the
I
one
know.
game suspension. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness,
it,
that
it
brings back some memories.
yeah. I agree with you, man. Like after what Vino said with the Gallagher thing, it did leave a really bad taste in my mouth, and I was like, yeah, I don't really think of him the same anymore, man. Like you can't be talking like that. Like it's so obvious. Like it sounds like the stuff that was coming out of his mouth was like pretty fucking stupid, right? Like it's like so obvious, right? So, it is what it is. He's not coaching anymore, well, for now, anyways, but.
Yeah,
Yeah, man. Speaking of kind of, we're gonna change gears here. Johnny Goodrow made his return to Calgary last week. I think it was last Monday, if I'm correct.
I think so.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. They did a video tribute for him, and as fans usually do, when he touches the puck, he gets booed. Um, like going back to that, he never really specified why he wanted to leave Calgary. It was just a really weird situation. Like everyone kind of had the thought process going like, yeah, he's probably going to stay in Calgary, like, they have a good thing going and why not, right? Like I mean they seem pretty close. Just McDavid was just carried Edmonton in that series just single-handedly, like dummied that whole Flames team, right? Like he like and I thought like, you know, maybe he stays in Calgary, right? And then I remember like within like a day, or not even a day, within like hours, it was like, oh, he's not going to be staying in Calgary. And then I was at that Spit and Chicklets event there where I met Biz, and all of a sudden I hear um, him going to Columbus, and I'm like, that is the most random destination ever. I'm like, really? I was like, hey man, they paid him pretty good, I guess, but I might have heard something too. I might have heard his wife is a nurse or something, and apparently in Ohio they have a really good um, children's hospital there, so that might have been for her as well. And if hey, you know what, if that's the case, I can't knock you for that. But it's just even for Flames fans, I still think like that left them kind of like in the dust. It's like they don't know why he left. They didn't really specify. At least he's like, I didn't want to play in Calgary anymore, but wasn't really a reason, right? But going back to his return, it was hey, they did a little tribute for him, and it was pretty cool. That I find it really cool that teams do that. Like they're they do little video tributes and like things like that for their franchise players or cornerstone players, or even just fan favorites that come back to town, right? So, what do you think of that, Damon?
I thought it was pretty surreal, like that way they brought him back, because like you had a lot of fans wearing Goodrow shirts and jerseys, and then they had like all the fans essentially during that tribute cheering him on, then booing him the next moment.
Yeah,
But just go, and then he missed that penalty shot, and you saw all the Flames fans cheering even more louder than you thought possible.
yeah, that was pretty funny too. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
but that
man,
whole situation, just wanted to circle back to like you were saying
sure,
before.
yeah,
I remember Philadelphia was the team he actually wanted to go to in the first place, because he was like
yeah.
he grew up a Flyers fan, and I guess when you get to that point in free agency, if you get to play for your childhood team, you want to take that opportunity. Similar to Pierre-Luc Dubois, like what he probably wants to do with the Habs in the near future.
Mhm.
And it still amazes me that it was pretty much down to the Flyers, and we all thought, okay, he's going to go to the Flyers soon, and the Flyers are going to make a move to create cap space to get him. And then he literally said, "I wanted to go to the Flyers," but Chuck Fletcher, one of the most unique GMs in the entire NHL,
Oh God.
all but knew he had a superstar that he wanted in his hands, and then didn't even move James Van Riemsdyk or any of the other big contracts he had just to bring him there.
I know, man. What was the crazy thing about that, Damon, was he he was asked why he didn't even give him an offer. That's the even more absurd thing, man. It's just they didn't even give Goudreau an offer, and apparently Chuck Fletcher was asked about that, and he basically said, "Oh, it would have been too hard to make cap space for him." Okay, but you just signed Rasmus Ristolainen into this god awful contract. Um, like again, you could have maybe tried to move JVR's contract. Like there's probables here. Like you could do it. Even if you have to buy out somebody, hey, go ahead and go for it, right? Like hey, this is a high skill set player. You got to try and go for the home run swing, right? Like I just don't understand how this guy could just literally say, "Oh, it just would have been too hard." Like that's such a easy way out, Like that's just so like pathetic. I'm sorry, but like
It
I want to be
is.
I don't want to be like I don't want to be like mean or anything, but it was pretty pathetic.
Yeah,
Like
and here's the other thing. He could have done what every other GM did, and they wanted to sign a big free agent, move a player with a big contract out and a pick to have them absorb that contract. Do that with JVR in Arizona.
exactly. There you
Like,
go. Like hey, Calgary did it with Montreal. They didn't want Monahan's contract anymore. I mean, obviously Monahan's been a great player for us, but they gave us a first rounder to take Sean Monahan's contract, right? So it was doable. I think just Chuck Fletcher just is very incompetent. I'm sorry, he's
oh,
he's incompetent. There's no other way to say it. Oh
or
man,
he's maybe just way too lazy. He's probably like, oh,
yeah,
superstar player. I could get that, but
yeah.
I'm too tired to do that. I'll just take
You know,
Rasmus Ristolainen and Nick Delorier, who's apparently
uh,
a very special player. Nick Delorier is pretty much the same
Glorious.
player as Nick Aube-Kubel, but Aube-Kubel is just a bit younger.
Honestly, though, like I will say, like I love Nick Delorier. I will
Oh yeah,
flat out say
he's good
that.
with us.
Yeah, I was not happy when they traded him. I was like, why? He's electric, man. Like he was. yeah, he doesn't really score much, but he does everything else right. Like I was kind of that was a puzzling trade basically,
Yeah.
to say the
Like the
least.
trade before that, like the earlier on in that trade with Nick Delorier, like I was
Yeah,
puzzled why we traded Andrew Ghetto because I actually liked Sven Andrew Ghetto because he had a lot of skill that he brought to the lineup.
yeah, he did.
And then
Skill
I
player.
just feel like I have a weird feeling just looking back at the trade tree. I think if Tyrion had maybe stayed or if Julian didn't completely change the team, I think we could have beat the Rangers because we essentially relied on old school hockey to try to beat the Rangers that playoff round and it just did not work out. Like you can't beat the Rangers with old school hockey, and that's what Claude Julien expected. And I think if we kept those guys like Andrew Ghetto and we gave those young skilled players more ice time in the playoffs, I think those guys would have had a bigger factor in that playoff series.
I agree. Even like I think he traded Andrew Ghetto to Colorado for
Martinson,
Andreas Martinson,
and then Martinson we traded for Delorier.
which was good because Delorier ended up becoming pretty solid for us. But man,
I
Martinson,
think
like I loved him at first. I was like, oh, he's a big checking forward, like checking line forward, which is what they needed, and he just couldn't. Yeah, he had no handles, like nothing.
yeah,
No offense to him, but
I
just
know he like all he could do is hit, like you're saying.
which is again he does something right, but like he didn't really again offensively he didn't really contribute much, and it just was kind of like a nothing trade. And Andrew Ghetto was pretty good with Colorado, like he was decent, serviceable, but then he just left and went to Europe, I think.
Yeah,
Didn't
he
really
went
do
back
much.
to Switzerland.
Yeah, yeah. Which I mean, hey, the Swiss league is pretty good. Honestly um, people sleep on the European leagues too much. Some of those leagues are actually really good hockey. So if you're not going to play in the NHL anymore, you're going to have a pretty decent career in Europe still.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I wanted to. This was actually a pretty big topic the last few weeks, I'd say. The Buffalo Sabres have been, making moves this year. They've kind of seemed like they've really taken that next step. And some of those pieces in that Eichel trade, I think we talked about before in previous episode. Like Alex Tuck and guys like that, like they're just starting to really, blossom. And like Tage Thompson's like probably the most talked about player in the league this year. Seems like he just really broke out the last couple of seasons. So my question is, do the Buffalo Sabres make the playoffs this year?
Ooh, this is going to be an interesting one because I'll say this as of this very moment as we're speaking right now.
Mm-hmm.
So they have 3 games in hand on the Washington Capitals, and the Capitals only have 2 more points than they do. But the Capitals, for a lot of the season, were missing Backstrom and Wilson.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say it's a 50-50 chance as it is right now, but it
Oh
wouldn't
yeah.
surprise me either if they do or if they don't. But Buffalo, like that story has just been so nice to see. Like Tage Thompson, and then you to see the kids taking over the team. You see Dylan Cousins, Jack Quinn, JJ Paterka, and all those guys, and Alex Tuck, like you said, as well. I kind of want them to make the playoffs now and just keep Florida sitting towards the bottom.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. Honestly, like I've been saying it for a while, but Buffalo, I said years ago, is going to be a good team eventually. Give them quite a bit. Because like maybe 4 years ago they were pretty rough looking, right? But man, they're just a completely different team now, different culture. Like I love Jack Eichel and all, but I think they needed a culture change and they needed to part ways with him because it seemed like it was like a very like very crappy situation, and there was obviously a lot of animosity built up over time with the lack of success. And I think his with him being the captain and obviously the franchise player, his frustration kind of you know it makes a long way, right? When your best player is frustrated, and it's just like if you're in a toxic workplace, right, and just people are frustrated, and it just it keeps spreading, right? So there was a lot of issues there. Obviously, it's nothing against Jack. He just wants to win. I think he's obviously in a great fit in Vegas now, and that trade's worked out for both teams in great ways. So yeah, I think the Sabres can make the playoffs. Personally, I think more of a well-rounded team than the Capitals. I just find the Capitals their style of play is just give Ovechkin the puck and he'll score because they're just trying to get him that goal record, which don't get me wrong, I think is great. I think it's great, and there's a great chance Ovechkin is going to pass Gretzky in that goal record, and we're going to see that in our lifetime, and that's going to be amazing. But it's not going to bring them anywhere, right? Like it's you just see a lot of their games. He just sits on that left wing on that one, waiting for that one timer, right? It's that like it's great what they're doing. They're trying to get them that record, but they're not going to win. They're not going to go far by if they keep doing that.
I agree. Like it's a good point you mentioned. Like it's gonna work in the regular season with Ovechkin, but in the playoffs, you're gonna have guys who are gonna smother him and limit his opportunities. And as looking back at the playoffs, there's a big reason to why I felt Washington throughout their history hasn't won many cups is because they've been going to that same game plan. But then when Barry Trotz implemented his more of a different system there, I felt that the style of play Washington had was much more offensive, but it was all around more offensive, and the team was still very responsible defensively.
Mm-hmm.
And it just clicked like that 2018 Capitals team.
Yeah.
And like man, like that Capitals team was a pretty nice story to see. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, but
Oh
like
yeah.
I just don't know if I have the full trust in that team. Like I have trust in Kemper as well in the back in the net, but I don't know fully about that back end as of right now.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, I mean, I want to go back to like that Capitals, like 2018 Capitals team. Like when they beat Pittsburgh in that second round, I was like, they finally did it. They finally beat Pittsburgh. I was like, now they're gonna win the cup, like, or they're gonna at least make the finals, right? So that was my thoughts on that. But yeah, like going for like what you were saying, like obviously Kemper's a good goalie and obviously won the cup with Colorado last season, right? So he's a great goalie. It's just I don't know what else they really have. It's just they're just trying so hard to give Obi the puck like any chance they get, right? And it's not really like a great system. Like it's just from what I see, and obviously like it's just obviously I mean their systems kind of always technically kind of revolved around him, anyways. Kind of like in soccer where like Argentina, like it's just give Messi the ball, or Portugal, like Ronaldo has to have the ball, right? It's like kind of that kind of system, right? Where or that kind of player that they have, right? So I mean, I think Buffalo, if they keep going doing what they're doing, maybe they could pick up some goaltending depth at the now I think of it, we were talking about teams that need goaltending. Maybe
Yeah.
Korpisalo or Godobin would be a decent
Oh
fit
yeah.
in Buffalo, right? Just as a guy like play a few games here and there. I mean, Craig Anderson's playing pretty good for Buffalo as it is, and he's in his late 30s almost, and he's still
He's
playing good hockey.
41.
41. Oh shit, my bad. Wow, didn't know he was that old, but man, good for him.
He
He's
could
still
play till
playing
he's
good.
50. Just it wouldn't surprise
Yeah,
me.
yeah, man. And that's another guy too. He was a great goalie in Ottawa for many years, and even like in the beginning of his career with the Florida Panthers too. Like great goalie. He's a very serviceable guy, a goalie. Sorry, and yeah, man. He's got a guy that can complement him, or play split the time if you have to, right? So, but I think Buffalo will make the playoffs. They probably won't go like past the first round. They don't have much experience, but you never know, right?
Yeah, like with
That's
those
possible.
teams like Buffalo that play fast hockey, like speed kills in the NHL, so you just never know what they could do.
Oh
Like let's
yeah,
say they play a Boston. Boston I find doesn't play as fast hockey, but they play more intimidation and physical.
yeah.
If you could kill them with your speed, like I wouldn't just imagine if Buffalo beats Boston. I'm not saying that it will, but just imagine.
Well, hey, going back to like the 2014 playoffs, right? The Habs killed Boston with speed, right? And that's how they beat them, right? Like you're saying, speed kills, right? So that's kind of like a little analogy there. I want to go to this is a trade actually. I think we talked about this last week. Um, Ryan Merkley, who was a pretty big prospect maybe 5-6 years ago, had a lot of upside and a lot of potential, you can say. He
He
got
did,
traded.
yeah.
Yeah, man, he was a great, like again, very good puck moving defenseman in junior, and all that. And the whole 10 yards. But he got traded to Colorado this past week, and I remember saying to you that if his head's in the right spot, then this can end up being a really good trade for Colorado. So, what do you think about that, Damon?
I think it's like you said, like it could be a good trade as well. So I remember like Ryan Merkley just as a player. I remember he had talent. I'm not denying that, but I remember he had a lot of attitude issues, which caused him to drop later on in the draft. So I think if I don't know if his attitude has changed per se. Like I haven't been following the player as much as like I did in the past, but I think if I think if his attitude gets a bit better and he's in more in the right mindset, I think this like could look like a steal, like we're saying right now.
Yeah, man. I mean, I remember seeing clips of him in junior. I believe he played for the Guelph Storm back
He
then.
did, yeah.
Yeah,
He
and
was
he
good
was
for them.
he was nasty, man. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like he was a great player, right? So I mean, hey, he might maybe start off with the Colorado Eagles in the American League there. I don't know what the situation is going to be with him. Maybe he starts out there, plays a couple games, gets his reputation up in a positive way, obviously, and then maybe he gets a call for the big club, right? And then he can end up being a good contributing part in the near future. And again, guy who's still really young. I don't even think he's 25 years old yet. I think he's like 23, 24 maybe.
I think he's like 20, I think he's 22 or 23.
Wow, you see, like there's still so much time for him to blossom, right? Like I know a lot of people say, like I've seen people online say, like, yeah, like a prospect that's like 23 or 24 that hasn't panned out, like kind of lose hope in them. Like I don't really believe in that because Tage Thompson, again, going back to the Sabres, right? Like Tage Thompson, a tongue twister. He kind of he was showed some strides of potential in the beginning of his career with Buffalo, but he really started to break out like a year or two ago, right? And sometimes, and again, he's just I think he's like 24, 25 now if I'm correct, and sometimes they just need a couple more years to develop, and some guys just develop a little bit later, right? So don't want to write off somebody. Yeah, maybe they haven't really shown their potential in their first little while of their career, but don't want to completely write off a young player like that. That's maybe in their just early to mid 20s because you just never know these days, right?
I agree. It's like you said, like development's a bit different for everyone because everyone will develop at different times. I just
Mhm.
want to use like Tage Thompson like as that example. I remember like he initially like I thought he played well. Like he looked like a solid like bottom nine player at the NHL. I thought initially, but then as the years went along, I thought okay, this guy's going to be a top line player. But he's become pretty much a superstar this season. But now like the question remains with him is if he can maintain this level of play, which I think he will be able to.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be because last year he scored, I think, over 35 goals, and he just that's when he really started to like to blossom, right? And I really think, yeah, if he keeps playing at the rate he is, he'll have a fantastic career.
I agree. And also, I
Yeah,
just wanted to ask you about
yeah.
the recent Habs video. I don't know if you saw the Habs video that they did about mental health and for Bell Let's Talk Month.
Yes. Yeah, I watched that on Saturday actually. I saw the headline for it um, in the middle of the week, I think on Wednesday when it was the Bell Let's Talk Day, and it said, for anyone who hasn't seen this video, it's on the Habs YouTube channel, Habs TV, and it was led by Jonathan Kovacevic, who again is a player I've started to grow really fond of on this team. I really like him, and I hope they keep him for a long time. But he opened up about anxiety and when he started in Montreal and adjusting to a new lifestyle and being very anxious about it. And then him and so it was him, Josh Anderson, and Michael Pizzetta. And I really liked this video. Um, it was just really good to give the fans a perspective that we're all human, even if you're a hockey player. And as us fans, we kind of on the outside, we put the players on a very high pedestal, and we think, like, oh yeah, like they have it all together, and these guys are, they have it all together, and they're like strong mentally or whatever, right? Like we don't think they they don't think they don't think about mental health sometimes, right? And it was really good to get a perspective from those three young men there to say, like, hey, sometimes, we have our days, or it's okay to talk to people. It's okay to talk to the people that are close to you, and when you're feeling depressed, or you're feeling anxious, and you know it was just really it's just really good to see that um guys with a platform like that to encourage people to open up about their mental health. And you know just because they're professional athletes, they feel feelings too, right? They have feelings just like us, right? So it was really good video to see. It really made me feel like I was overwhelmed, but in a good way, where I felt like, wow, like these guys are giving the fans a good perspective, and a very positive perspective, right? And they were just talking a lot about mental health, and like mental health facts in Canada. And it was definitely something I'd recommend watching for any fans, not just Hab fans, but hockey fans around the league, that haven't seen that video yet. I would definitely give it a shout for sure. Yeah, give it a watch for sure. Sorry.
I agree. Well said. And also, just one thing I do want to like mention. So there's a soccer player named Trevor Chalobah on Chelsea who said some stuff recently about mental health. He said that he feels like fans and just the people he finds put the athletes on pedestals and talk about them as if they're superhumans. He said like we're all just regular people. We all suffer it, and it's like his mental health is just something so important to talk about. And always reach out for help if you ever need it.
Yeah, man. It's trust me, for someone that's been through it, it's always good to and still at times goes through it. It's good to try and have people that you're really close with, and to talk to. Like I have really good friends, and a great girlfriend and family that I trust, and I know they're not going to judge me if I'm having a day like that. And I encourage everyone else to do the same. Like keep your friends and your family and whichever other loved ones you have close to you, and it just will make you happier. And just having a good support system is will make you happier long term.
I agree. Well said. Yeah, well said there. And also, I just wanted to touch on the All-Star game that is coming up this weekend.
Hmm.
And I'm going to throw you on the spot here. So I'm just
Sure.
wondering, are you a fan of the current format of it?
uh it's like the 3-on-3 games, right?
Yeah, the 3-on-3, the tournament.
Yeah, like I don't know, like I'm very, like I've said before, like I'm very traditional in a lot of ways. Personally, I like the East versus West better. Just like a full team, East versus West, keeps everything simple. You know what I mean? But um, you know, I'm okay, and again, I'm okay to change too, right? Like I mean, personally, the 3-on-3 games are kind of cool. The concept's pretty cool, but personally for me, I prefer just the regular format when I was growing up, when it was just East versus West, or they had the draft. I remember back a while back they had the draft. I remember when Phil Kessel got picked last. Like that was funny. That was fun. Like those were like fun times for the All Star game. Now I feel like sometimes, like again, it's great for growing the game. Like I've said on the show before, like great marketing for the league. But sometimes I just feel like it's really forced. You know what I mean? And it's like the players, so like again, I'm just being real with when I say this. A lot of players look like they don't even want to be there because it's just kind of like this silly thing. But again, the skills competition is really fun. I think the players look forward to that maybe. But sometimes they just look like they don't. They just want to go to Florida for the weekend, or freaking go to LA for the weekend and party or something. But what do I know? This is just my opinion.
Yeah, I actually have a. I'm gonna throw a hot take as a least of a way I'd like to see the All Star game done.
Yeah, let's see it. Let's hear it.
So, the first way I would kind of like to see the All Star game done is Thursday night. We have a draft. I will kind of want to see a change from the divisions and have four superstars in it. Y'all. Let's say we have McDavid, we have Crosby, we have Ovechkin, and let's just say I don't know who else you want to throw into that category. If you throw Tage
Uh,
Thompson because he's having a good season as well, I guess
sure.
for the fun
Yeah,
of it
yeah, yeah.
into a way where they have to draft a 3-on-3 or a 5v5 team in a tournament, And then I think the skills competition is going to be done should be done as a tournament, and then there's an all-star tournament, but done with a draft. Because I find like the draft is always entertaining to watch, and you have those fun moments with Phil Kessel getting picked last, and then you also had Ovechkin saying, "I need a new car, picked me last." Then he gets picked right after. I think that'd be a fun thing to try, but I don't know about the long-term longevity of it. But I also like the East versus West as a kid.
Yeah, I love that whole thing. The East versus West was good, but also again like the draft when they pick two captains and they just go back and forth picking players. That was always something fun to watch. Like I remember like again that draft when they did it. It was so successful. Fans loved it. Like it was just like a really cool thing. Like I think personally I think they should just bring that back. That's just like awesome. Oh, let's just comment here. I want to see. I wish we can play NHL All Stars. Oh, that would be a cool idea. Yeah,
I think that'd be fun to see, but
that
I
would
think it'd
be.
be a whooping essentially.
Yeah, but I mean,
It'd be fun though.
I know, like for here's an example, like MLS All Stars. I remember one year they do it every year. It's MLS All Stars versus like a team in Europe. Like I remember one year it was like AS Roma, or one year it was like Juventus. I think if I'm correct, but like,
I think so.
um, yeah, like stuff like that would be cool. That's actually whoever put that comment. That's a very cool idea. That would probably be something to see, but maybe once down the road.
I agree. And also, I'm just wondering, since we're approaching the end of the episode, is there anything else we should touch on?
I just want to say one more thing. Last week I was having some Wi-Fi connection problems. I think near the end of the show I cut out, and I was very upset about that. And I just wanted to apologize to the fans for that. That kind of sucked. We had like kind of like an outro planned out for the thing, but for the episode last week. But yeah, I'm trying to keep it consistent. As maybe some people see, I kind of moved settings. I'm in my room instead of my basement, so obviously everything's been great. So we'll see. Yeah, going forward, hopefully we're gonna try to. I want to keep everything consistent and with my connection and all that. So that's pretty much it. And also, don't forget to follow us here on YouTube. Click and like and subscribe. Follow us on our socials. We got Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Also, we have nice merch.
yes, yes. Go grab our merch. I ordered some merch a few weeks ago. When it comes in, I will be wearing it on the show first thing, ready to go. So don't forget our merch, guys. We have lots of nice merch, and might even try to release some more merch. So we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah. Let's all stay tuned and also be excited for the future, guys.
Yes, for the Habs, be positive. I know Saturday's game was really bad, but you know what, guys? Just keep the Habsivity going. Trust the process, and we'll get there one day. We'll be back in the finals one day. Things are on the right track this time.
Cheers.
All right, guys. Take care. Have a good night.